They called him the Lion of Judah. To his people, he was a reformer and a ruler chosen by destiny. To the world, he was the voice of Africa's awakening. And to millions, he was more than a man, he was divine. This is the story of Haile Selassie I, emperor, statesman, visionary, and a symbol of an unbroken crown. Born Tafari Makonnen in 1892, he was a child of nobility, raised with a profound sense of discipline and purpose. He learned early in life that power isn't simply given, it is earned through knowledge, strategy, and restraint. He spoke softly, but his presence carried an authority that could silence entire rooms. He was both a scholar and a soldier, a man shaped equally by Ethiopia's ancient, sacred traditions, and a burning desire to see his nation stand shoulder to shoulder with the great powers of the world. As regent, and later as emperor, he embarked on a mission to steer Ethiopia toward the modern age. He built schools where none had existed, and hospitals to care for his people. He introduced a written constitution, a revolutionary step for the ancient empire, and opened the doors of learning to both women and men. His vision was a delicate balancing act, to modernize without sacrificing heritage, to help his nation grow without it losing its soul. To the outside world, he quickly became a potent symbol of African pride and sovereignty. But at home, he was a cautious reformer. His every step toward progress was met with another challenge: resistance from the old nobility, the deep-rooted poverty of rural life, and the immense weight of centuries pressing down on the future. He was respected, but sometimes he was also questioned. Then in 1935, the storm arrived. Fascist Italy, under Mussolini, invaded Ethiopia. Haile Selassie stood before the League of Nations, a solitary figure representing a besieged nation, and delivered a speech that would echo through history. "It is us today," he declared, his voice ringing with prophetic clarity. "It will be you tomorrow." The hall fell silent, but his words thundered across the globe. He became the moral conscience of a world sliding inexorably toward war, a small, steadfast man facing the machinery of modern empire with only his faith and his dignity as armor. The war was brutal and long, but victory eventually came. When Haile Selassie returned to his throne in Addis Ababa, he was no longer just a monarch. He was a living symbol of resistance, a testament to the power of endurance against overwhelming odds. Across the continent, Africa looked to him as proof that independence could be defended, that an African crown could shine unbroken against the darkness of colonialism. But even as his stature grew on the world stage, his image had already crossed the ocean and taken on a new, spiritual meaning. In the Caribbean, particularly in Jamaica, a movement had been taking shape: the Rastafari. They saw in Haile Selassie not just a powerful emperor, but the very embodiment of a divine promise. To them, he was the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, the King of Kings foretold in Scripture, a black Messiah rising from the motherland of Africa. His coronation in 1930 wasn't just a political event. For the Rastafari, it was the fulfillment of prophecy, a sign of redemption for a people scattered and oppressed for centuries. When Haile Selassie visited Jamaica in 1966, the island was overcome with an outpouring of joy and reverence. Tens of thousands gathered to see him, their cheers echoing through the streets of Kingston. They wept, they chanted, and they lifted their hands toward the sky. They called his name not as a title, but as a prayer: Jah Rastafari. The emperor, a devout Orthodox Christian, never claimed divinity for himself. Yet he understood what he represented. He saw in their eyes the power of faith to heal the deep wounds of history and restore a sense of dignity and belonging. Through the global phenomenon of reggae music and the powerful voices of artists like Bob Marley, his message of unity, equality, and self-determination resonated around the world. Haile Selassie's words from his speech to the United Nations were set to music, becoming an anthem for freedom fighters and human rights advocates everywhere. Until the philosophy which holds one race superior and another inferior is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned, everywhere is war. Those words weren't just politics. They felt like prophecy, a timeless call for justice that continues to inspire. Yet, like all historical figures, Haile Selassie was a man of complexity and contradiction. He was not without his flaws. He ruled with immense conviction, but often with a detached and autocratic hand. He valued order and stability, sometimes at the expense of openness and dissent. As the decades passed, his ancient empire began to face modern problems that his style of rule struggled to contain. Famine, growing unrest, and persistent demands for political reform began to shake the very foundations of his throne. In 1974, the long reign came to a tragic and abrupt end. The emperor who had stood before kings and dictators, who had defied an empire and inspired millions, was overthrown by his own military. It was an end that felt both shocking and, in retrospect, perhaps inevitable. But even in death, the legend of Haile Selassie refused to fade. He remains a figure of immense significance, viewed through many different lenses. To some, he is the great modernizer who brought Ethiopia into the 20th century, a visionary leader who laid the groundwork for a new era. To others, he remains a divine symbol of black identity, resistance, and spiritual redemption. And to history, he is both. A man of deep faith and profound paradox, of immense power and quiet humility, whose extraordinary life seemed to bridge the gap between heaven and earth. Haile Selassie I, the power of the Trinity, the Lion of Judah, the Emperor who became eternal. If you found this story fascinating, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe the channel for more untold stories of African greatness, leadership, and legacy.